Hello everyone, a very good morning to one and all present here. Thank you for joining our part 2 of our two-part webinar series for the topic Top Underrated Active Directory Management Features of ADManager Plus. Now before I begin with the session, may I please get a confirmation from you regarding the status of the audio and video? Great, thank you so much. Right. So let me quickly proceed with the session. Once again, allow me to thank you for taking your time out and joining us today. So if you have attended yesterday's session, you would have understood that the objective of our webinar is to throw light on some of the lesser known features of ADManager Plus. Now, without any delay, let's get started. Let me quickly log into the application. And you can go ahead and use the demo.admanager plus workshop, demo.admanagerplus.com URL. I'll be pinging that in the chat window. So if you want to try those actions as we go about today's session, you can go ahead and do that, or you can do it whenever at a convenient time for you as well. So this is let me enter. It's https://demo.admanagerplus.com. Right. Please ignore the previous one. This is the right URL. So you may go ahead and use this URL as well. Right. For today's session, let's begin with an important topic, which is compliance. So with the advent of compliance regulations like SOX, HIPAA, PCI DCS, GLBA, GDPR, organizations have undergone radical changes in recent years. So organizations can no longer keep perfectionary financial records just to satisfy the occasional cursory audit. Compliance now means making elaborate records of day-to-day activities and I see that some of you have already started asking questions. I will be answering those questions once the session ends. I'm really sorry, I will not be able to do both at the same time. Right. Thank you so much. Right. So as I was saying, compliance now means making elaborate records of day-to-day activities and then keeping those records for periods that are recommended by these newer regulatory acts. So to address security and compliance requirements faster and with less effort, organizations need simpler and more efficient reporting solutions that enables them to generate AD reports on key changes at any time. So ADManager Plus has a comprehensive reporting feature. You can find that under the AD Reports tab right here. So ADManager Plus has a comprehensive reporting system that addresses various compliance management issues. So it delves into the core of Windows and AD to fetch the data required for audit compliance, and you can also export that data. What's more, as opposed to loads of time and labor involved in using native tools like PowerShell, ADManager Plus presents this data in a user-friendly format with a plenty of filters that allows you to view only the required data. So what you can do is you can conveniently extract and export any piece of information that is required to meet these regulatory compliance mandates such as HIPAA or SOX or GDPR or FISMA. So you can see that right here. So let's say you are generating one specific report. As you might be familiar with the fact that we have option to export this report in any of these formats like CSV, PDF, HTML, Excel, and CSV. You can add a description for the report, And you can also further refine these reports by, let's say you want to check more details apart from these listed columns right here. You can click on add and remove columns and just add these attributes right here. So you click on one and click on the arrow right here, so it gets added and then it gets displayed in the report. So you can play around with these, and you can also get these reports that are up to date, and the values are generated. The values are picked up from the AD as and when the report is generated, right? So apart from that, rather than, let's say you do not have time to log into the application and then click on individual reports and generate them, you can also make use of the scheduled reports feature right here. So you can choose to create a schedule for any of the report. So all you have to do is just select the desired reports that you want to view. You want the results to be sent to your inbox at a, for a particular duration. Let's say you want it to be sent daily, weekly, monthly. You can specify the time here. You can specify the storage path, what format you want it to be, and this is where you can specify the email address. So you can make use of the report scheduler as well, and this makes getting latest information regarding your Active Directory environment a lot more easier. So that's how it's going to aid you with compliance. Moving on. So let's say you are creating users in Active Directory. So if you are creating a user for a specific department, say marketing or HR, you want certain attributes, you want certain group memberships, certain NTFS folders, certain contact attributes, everything to reflect uniformly for all those users, right? So how do you ensure that uniformity or standardization of values? So we have something called as templates, which you can find under AD management section. And right here, there is an option called user creation templates. So these templates, so I can go ahead and you can see that there are some predefined templates right here. You have an option of creating a new template as well. So there are no restrictions to the number of templates that you can create. So let's say you want to create one template for one particular department. So for finance, you want to create a template. For HR, you want to create a template. And every time a user is onboarded to that specific department, all you have to do is just load the template in the user creation process, and all those attributes that you've configured for that particular department for that in that template will get auto populated. So I click on create new template, and right here there's an option called creation rules. Now, using this creation rules, what you can do is you can specify the attributes that should be automatically updated with predefined values whenever a user account is created. So this creation rules feature enables administrators to reactively update specific attributes while creating user accounts. That is, using these rules, they can set up conditions which, on being satisfied, shall trigger auto population of desired attributes. Let me show you an example. So I can click on creating a new rule, and right here there is an option called add conditions. Now let's say I am adding a particular user to a specific department. So the employee onboarding is happening for the IT department. So right here you can set the department is IT, right? So when the HR or when the administrator is entering the department of the user as information technology, you can go ahead and set values here that can be assigned to specific attributes. So here I want to set the member of as, let's say, IT specific user. So I click on add groups, and I click on some IT specific groups. So departments that are specific only to IT, I go ahead and add that. And I also have an option of adding more filter values right here. So I click on add, and let's say I want the manager, right? So if the person belongs to, if a user is belonging to the IT department, is onboarded to the IT department, I want the manager attribute to be set to a certain person. So I can go ahead and add a certain user as a manager. I want to, again, you can click on add, and similarly I can go ahead and set so many. I can set the telephone number, I can set the description, I can set the city, I can set the profile path, right? So you can see there are many operations that you can perform using creation rules. So once you've done that, and once you click save, and every time you're using this particular template for user creation, then immediately the tool will check whether the department is IT. And if that's the case, then the member of will get updated to all these values. The manager will be automatically auto populated. Similarly, if you have configured a bunch of attribute values like this, all this will take place. So this will ensure that there are no manual errors when you're manually going and configuring groups, home folders, profile path, or any of that. You can completely avoid any such errors, and this will ensure that the entire user provisioning is really smooth, and all the users will have uniform and standardized values. So that is one use case, so which you can make use of in user creation template. Similarly, we have very similar feature in user modification as well. So when you see user modification templates right here, we have user modification as well, right? So I'm sorry, we have modification rules as well. So similarly, if you are a user is changed from one department to another, or a user is moved from one region to another, and or let's say a user is being promoted and he wants an entirely a new set of values to be configured for his attributes, say his manager is changing, or his group memberships are changing, then similarly when you're applying user modification templates to create or to modify user, then those values that you have listed here in the conditions will take effect. So that's how it works for user creation as well as user modification. So that is one use case. Now, once again, back to templates. So let's say in an Office 365 hybrid configuration, remote mailboxes helps you to efficiently manage Office 365 mailbox properties. So a bulk remote mailbox creation is impossible with native tools, and it's incredibly complex with PowerShell. So ADManager Plus offers a much simpler GUI based alternative. So what you can do is you can create remote mailboxes in Exchange Server 2010, 13 and 16, while provisioning new AD accounts for users individually as well as in bulk. So all you need to do is you can configure the remote, enable the remote mailbox, and you can configure the remote routing address during the user account creation. So here you have an option to choose the naming format for that routing address. And once you go ahead and save this particular template, what happens is when you're using this particular template in user creation for bulk also, let's say you're using a CSV file and you are mentioning this particular template in the CSV file, or you are using the automation tool in the ADManager Plus and you're specifying this particular template. So what happens is this configuration that you have done for remote mailbox will get will take into effect. So what happens is when you have specified that, you can create a remote mailbox for all those users in bulk, and it'll just simplify your configuration, and it'll help you with O365 management, your on-prem configuration, a much easier task, right? So that is one topic with respect to templates. So we covered creation rules as well as remote mailbox. Another thing that I would additionally like to mention here is, so let's say a folder management is crucial to protect important files and documents from unauthorized access, and hence maintaining NTFS of folder security management of folders is very important, right? So if you're using native tools or PowerShell scripts to manage users, it's a really cumbersome process, as it requires a regular monitoring of NTFS permissions to ensure security, right? So the important folders must be made non-inheritable to avoid any breach to files. Now, to make this possible, it is essential to monitor Windows NTFS permissions on the folders. Now, there are different ways to go about it. We do have under AD reports, we have NTFS reports where you can go ahead and generate each of these reports. And let's say I'm going to generate this particular report where this will list all the shares and the permissions in the server. So I'm just going to randomly select few shares and then I hit OK. So once again, you can see that there's an option for you. If you've configured multiple domains, you have an option of choosing multiple domains, and you can choose the computers, and then we can see what all permissions that particular share has. Right, so this is taking a while, but anyway, similarly, you can go ahead and configure. You can find the permissions for other folders, for uh, list the folders over which specific accounts have permissions, like users and groups. What are the folders which are protected from inheritable permissions, and so on. Now, let's say you want to uh, grant access for a user to certain file servers, certain critical file servers, but you want to do it only for a certain amount of time, like for a certain period. Now, how do you go about doing that? So you can once again you can create a workflow request. So if you're familiar with workflow, you know that this is a multi-level approval process where you raise a request, and then a reviewer or an approver or an executor, if you've configured in that way, will take a look at that request, and then if it looks all right, it will be approved and moved on to the next stage, and then the next stakeholder will take a look at it, and then it will be approved, and then finally, only if the reviewer and the approver has validated that particular request, that the executor can perform that action. Now, the best thing about is, let's say you want to give NTFS permissions for a particular user, but you also want to make sure that it is being properly accounted, like it's being properly reviewed before it's being taken care of. And you also want to ensure that the permissions are given only for a certain amount of time. That is, you do not grant them excessive rights or for more than necessary, right? So how do you go about doing that? So right here you have an option called create request. So if you click that, the last option, set folder permissions. Now I can go ahead and choose a subject, enter a subject right here, and the request action is we are setting folder permissions. You can choose your domain, and here this is where you can select the folder. So I click on the icon, and this will list all the folders in this particular DC, and right here I can choose the user for whom I want to grant this particular permission to access, and you can choose again here, you can set the permission level, whether you want to give full control or just read or just list folder contents. And if you click on advanced, you can see a more granular level permission can also be granted. Right here you can select whatever you want, multiple options as well, and click done. Now the best part is, this is where you can set the time. So under duration section you can give for, let's say, for 30 minutes, for 1 hour, for 2 hours, for 1 day, or a specific day, right? So the best part is you can just ensure that those users have permission to access that particular NTFS and share permissions or any critical file servers only for a certain period of time. And once that is done, once that period ends, let's say if you've given for 30 minutes, then once that ends, then that user will no longer be able to access that file server, right? So there is no need for the administrator to go ahead and then once again check for the file permissions that the user has and then revoke them. So this is an automated process, and you can also specify just the priority right here, whether you want to treat this request as high or medium or normal, and you can also set the description. It would be really useful when you're sending this request across to the executor to execute this task. So that is one. So moving on to the last use case. Now you might have used the automation tool in our product for stale account cleanup. So let me go ahead and explain how a stale account cleanup works. Now for that, we need to configure automation policy, as well as we have to make use of that automation policy in automation schedule right here. So the first step is the administrator wants to identify all the inactive users, let's say in who have been inactive for around 120 days, and he wants to deprovision those accounts as alone. So so deprovisioning normally doesn't is not a one step thing. So we would first want to remove the group memberships the user has, or move them to a different OU and disable them, and these set of actions can be done before the actual deleting of the users takes place, or just the actual disabling of the users takes place. So how do you go about doing that? So we can configure a new automation policy to do that. So I click on new automation policy, and the first task that I'm going to do once I've identified the inactive users is I'm going to move those users to a specific OU. So you can create a new OU. Let's say you have a new OU where you're moving all the inactive users who have been inactive for, let's say, 120 days. You can move them to a specific OU. You want to deprovision them, so you can move them to a different OU so that you can perform management actions on those users in that OU, and you can completely, it's very easy to segregate between the active and the inactive users. So just for ease of management, you can go ahead and move that. Now I do not want to perform any other management action right away, so I can go ahead and add successive tasks. So here you have an option of configuring the number of days or the number of hours that you want. So now that the first instant task, move users, is done, I want to wait for, let's say, 10 days before removing them from groups. So either you have an option of clearing all group memberships, or you can click on this plus icon, and this will list all the groups in your domain, and you can just choose which all groups that you want to remove these users from. Say these users belong to top level security groups, and you do not want those users to have access to those groups in case those accounts are misused. So you can just select the groups that you do not want those users to be a part of, and you just click OK, right? So once that is done, I would like to wait for another 10 days before I go ahead and disable those users, right? Now, similarly, I want to wait for another 10 days and I want to remove their licenses or something of that sort. So you can go ahead and see that there are a bunch of a bunch of tasks that you can make use of to make this deprovisioning action, a sequential task rather than a one-shot thing, right? So another error that you might have faced, or that you might have accidentally overlooked some things, is now when you're fetching inactive users, right, before performing this automation that you have configured, what happens is sometimes these users, or maybe some of those users who've been inactive for a really long time, might have logged into their accounts and resumed their normal activity. So what happens is you might not have noticed that, and you just would blindly fetch the report, and just the tool would just execute the automation as per plan. Now, how do you avoid that? So right next to the successive tasks, you have an option called more. So when you click on this particular section, which says generate the report again before performing this task, what happens is the tool will generate the inactive users report, and it'll get the most up-to-date values. That is, say a user who was inactive yesterday is not inactive anymore, then that the tool will identify that the user is no longer inactive, and then only these tasks that you have set here would execute. So similarly, you can go ahead and choose that for every single instantaneous task. So I'm sorry, every single successive task that you've configured. So once that is done, this will ensure that you do not deprovision any active users by mistake who were inactive earlier and who's now active. So this will ensure that there are no such deprovisioning errors that can be that could cause a lot of problems for you, because that means you would have to again create user account for those users, and again go ahead and set privileges and manage their accounts and set up everything from scratch. So this is how you can avoid that particular difficulty or that challenge in deprovisioning, right? So that was the we have actually come to the end of our session, and we have tried to squeeze in some top underrated features of ADManager Plus in yesterday's and today's session. We did have a lot more topics to cover, but we were not sure because we have a limited time bandwidth here. So if you feel that you would want us to cover some specific topic in our upcoming webinar series, then please let us know. So we would definitely take that into account, and we will try to implement that in our upcoming series. So we will try to make this a regular thing. So we will keep updating our content and our agenda, and we'll make sure that we cover all those minute and those finer aspects of the tool that you might have just overlooked, right? So with that, I would like to conclude today's session. Now, if you have any more questions, please let me know and I will address them as soon as possible. You can, for any feature specific, let's say you tried out some of these features and you were not able to get the desired results because there was some glitch in the product, then please do contact our support team, support@admanagerplus.com. So our support team will reach out to you and then guide you on how to go about doing that particular action successfully. If you feel that the tool isn't acting the way it is supposed to, then support team will be able to guide you with that. Now, once again, I would like to thank you for the overwhelming response that you have received for the series. I have got a few suggestions, and all your suggestions will be taken into account and will be implemented in our forthcoming sessions. Now, if you attended our session yesterday, I did mention about our seminar, which is slated to happen sometime in March. So I have given the registration link yesterday as well, but you've missed yesterday's session, so you can find the link right here. So we have the sessions happening in New York, Chicago, and Arlington. So if you're in the vicinity, or if you would like to go ahead and check out those seminars, please do not hesitate to go ahead and register. And we do have an early bird offer right now, so it would be great if you can make use of that offer. And if you have any questions regarding that particular event, then you can contact our events team. So I have given the email address also. Yes, and I would also be processing these videos and then sending it to you. If you have requested for it, I will be emailing them to you as well. And when I send these videos, you will also get a copy of our ebook where I'll be talking about such features, such some certain things that you might have overlooked, and how ADManager Plus will help you deal with those, or help you to manage those AD challenges that you face day to day. Right. So once again, thank you so much for being a part of this webinar series. And I thank you all for attending and being very engaging with the questions that you've put forth during the session. Now, if you have any questions regarding the tool, or any questions regarding our webinar series, or any topics that you want to be covered, you can feel free to reach out to me. I will leave my email address here as well. It is megha.r@zohocon. So you can reach out to me as well, and I would try to assist you as soon as possible. So thank you all and have a good day. Thank you.